The Iranian Customs has recently published the country's trade balance for the first quarter of the Persian year 1395, starting March 21st, 2016. The numbers show that the trend of Iranian exports and imports is a booming one, where the balance is tilted in the disfavor of exports. This is at a time when the country has just recently been relieved from an illegal regime of sanctions which were finally lifted after a marathon of negotiations and a landmark deal between Tehran and 6 world powers, which have now infused the Iranian public with much-needed optimism. A hopeful condition which many believe can overcome the country's recessionary economy. Hello, welcome to yet another Iran Today here on Press TV with me, Zubin Zarvan. In this episode, we'll be discussing the Iranian balance of trade and just how Tehran will be successful in boosting exports. Stay with us. For average Iranians in the past couple of years, it's been quite important to know if the country's trade balance has been on the plus or minus. As to them, any increase on the import of foreign goods equals a loss in the local job market. So naturally, they'd like to see a positive balance in foreign trade in favor of domestic production. The press, in the meantime, has as a result been quite meticulous over the years in following closely and in detail the figures being published by the Iranian Customs Authority, and has not pulled any punches in offering scathing criticisms if an item were to be found on the imports list which could have otherwise been produced inside the country. The Iranian oil and gas revenues and the country's dependence on it had, traditionally speaking, made it a whole lot easier for the country to use those petrodollars for importing foreign-made goods. This is at a time, though, that in recent years, and because of the international sanctions, and especially those targeting the Iranian banking and financial sector, the situation wasn't all that easy for local importers and exporters because transferring funds in and out of the country was really hard. Now, though, and over a year since the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or JCPOA, was signed between Iran and the P5+1, the news suggests that in the first quarter of the new Persian year 1395, the country has exported some $16,308,000,000 worth of commodities, which marks a 21% increase since a year before. At the same time, imported some $12,865,000,000 worth of foreign goods, which is quite unprecedented in Iran. It's been a few years since the Iranian economy has entered a period of stagflation, which means a situation in which you have both inflation and stagnation. On the one hand, the recession has meant less production, less jobs, and less income. And on the other, inflation has caused prices to soar. Taken together, these two make a terrible mix, which if it were to afflict an economy, such as it is the case over here in Iran, it would be really hard to fix, as technically speaking, what remedies stagnation spurs inflation, and any counter-inflationary measure would inherently induce a measure of stagnation.
اقتصاد ایران در یک شرایطی قرار داره که به اسم استگفلیشن.
Iran's economy is in a state of stagflation, which is a combination of stagnation and inflation. This condition is like having a fever and the chills at the same time. This makes conditions difficult to be dealt with. If the fever is to be controlled, the chills worsen and vice versa. It's a difficult condition, but not an impossible one. There's competent historical and empirical studies that show stagflation can be successfully dealt with.
و مواردی که توانستن.
But taking a look at the published figures shows that little by little the economists are getting hopeful of weathering these stagflationary storms. Meanwhile, in a bid to exit the recession, the Iranian government as of a year ago has put together an economic package, which includes galvanizing demand, financing SMEs, as well as restructuring efforts in the banking sector. Although even then this had drawn a lot of criticism, it has thus far managed to cut inflation down from 40% in 2013 to just 9% in 2016.
در بخش عرض شود که نرخ تورم دولت واقعا تونسته متوقف بکنه.
The administration has been able to curb the upward trend of inflation rate. It has also successfully limited the negative growth of the economy and has brought it to the positive area. All these achievements, including the ones in the production sector, have paved the way for a flourishing production sector. As a matter of fact, the ground is ripe for more production in the country, but what matters is how this is going to take place. The administration keeps saying it has reined in inflation rate and has managed to tackle recession. So what? What is the outcome of these achievements?
This is the same kind of problem a lot of Iranians point at, and by its resolution, expect due vitality and currency be finally restored to the local market. Like always, the Iranian economy is waiting for the government's next move, and the government, by offering financial assistance and loans to various local small to medium-sized enterprises, that is SMEs, seeks to fix the recession.
اگر ما صنایع کوچک و متوسط توانمند و رقابت پذیری نداشته باشیم صنایع بزرگ رقابت پذیری هم.
Without competitive and robust small and mid-sized enterprises, we can never expect to nurture heavyweight but efficient industries in Iran. There are no industries in the world that handle all their matters alone. Instead, they resort to outsourcing strategies and hire smaller firms to handle their things. This is a norm in the world. This is where small-sized firms become important for supplying the needs of bigger industries. In order for major industries to become competitive and generate added values so that the economy can be weaned off oil revenues in line with the economy of resistance policies, we need to complete the supply chain in all industries. To this end, small and mid-sized enterprises must be supported.
Regardless, there are still some economists out there who lack any confidence in the existing SME situation in Iran. They believe any hope placed on such businesses to sell or survive will be dashed, and thoughts there are none but wishful thinking. Such enterprises that even now are faced with heaping bank debts.
Since small to medium-sized enterprises pay off quickly, they are of high importance. However, because competition is very tense among such firms, and the goods supplied by them have to compete with formidable foreign rivals, their market is fraught with risks, which ensues frail business.
Despite this, even now, some 46% of all employment prospects are reserved for the SMEs, who represent some 96% of the entire Iranian industrial landscape, and have moreover managed to generate some 10% of Iran's non-oil and direct exports. As such, and because these enterprises or businesses have a direct impact on people's lives and livelihood, the leader of the Iranian Islamic Revolution, Ayatollah Khamenei, has repeatedly demanded special attention be paid to it under the concept of a resistance economy.
الان چند هزار کارگاه و کارخانه متوسط و کوچک در کشور هست، چندین هزاره. اگر چنانچه این آماری که بنده گفتم که به من دادن این آمار را که 60% از اینها الان دچار بیکاری و تعطیل هستن، اگر این آمار درست باشه اون خسارته. اون چیزی که در متن جامعه اشتغال ایجاد میکند، تحرک ایجاد میکند، طبقات پایین رو بهره مند میکنه، همین صنایع کوچک و متوسط از اینا رو تقویت کنن و پیش ببرن.
You see, the extent to which the Iranian local SMEs are rapidly expanding at the moment, and the care needed in offering them any financial assistance by the government has made the job and responsibilities of the Iranian guarantee funds somewhat difficult, so much so that many SMEs, that is small to medium-sized enterprise owners in Iran, are having a lot of difficulty in receiving such assistance, and many of them complain they really haven't been able to receive any such loans despite repeated trials and requests. Well, this is something the head of the Iranian Trade Promotion Organization refuses to accept.
اطلاعاتی که من دارم گویی که این فعالیت در حوزه معاونت‌های دیگر وزارتخونه انجام میشه.
I've been informed that despite the fact that such activities are being pursued by the Ministry of Industry, Mine and Trade, the demands of small enterprises are endorsed and are taken into account in the related committees and finally transacted with banks for studies of the financial justification of their proposals. So far, over 300 firms have been funded by various banks, including the Bank of Industry and Mine. I hope this trend will be growing in the future.
At any rate, small Iranian businesses, however, are functioning now despite stagnant conditions, such as this furniture-making workshop, which, regardless of reduced demand in past years due to political fluctuations affecting the local economic scene, is now facing a majorly depressed situation. We asked the owner of this production unit whether the current administration and the JCPOA have made a tangible difference in his business.
Things were okay in the beginning months of the new administration, but after certain political developments and the nuclear talks, the market slipped into a recession, which was clearly felt in the country. This was especially tangible during the nuclear talks. We suffered a lot in the production sector and lost a lot of profits during the talks. Many businesses had to operate while suffering major losses in order to stay in business. As a matter of fact, many companies and enterprises buckled under the sanctions and had to fire most of their staff. We tried to stay in business with the hope that an economic boom would take place after the JCPOA's implementation. Unfortunately, this has not been the case so far.
Although a measure of relative stability has already been achieved in favor of those active in the Iranian SME arena, yet for many people this has only meant stillness, inertia, and dormancy. Of course, this has been quite different in some other sectors, especially that of the food. In an interview we had with the executive manager of a poultry farm and an egg producer, I asked him about his company's challenges and prospects. He told me about their new products and future plans as well.
We've developed this new protein-rich drink based on egg white in a variety of tastes. It looks and tastes like chocolate milk in a way that one cannot tell the difference. But this product bears none of the harmful contents in milk like lactose, fat, and etc. White is very rich in protein and has the greatest protein content in comparison to other foodstuff. We're currently working on a new egg-based ice cream. After this, a ready-to-consume egg product for bodybuilders as well. This egg sandwich based on white is another item we're producing for presentation in schools for kids. Our aim is promotion of the society's health and consumption of healthy food.
Beyond production and supplying domestic demand, and in order to continue growing and effectively compete on the international scale, these businesses need to present their products overseas by way of export. But since they are essentially small enterprises, they really do need government support. These supports, however, can come in the form of export bonuses, incentives, or customs exemptions. Our furniture maker, however, complains about the lack of such availabilities in his line of work.
We are not exporting our products for the time being. And the reason is exporting in Iran is very much different from other countries. Take Turkey for instance. When it exports an item, like a piece of furniture, from Turkey, the government pays the producer up to 18% of the price of the item as an incentive for more exports. This is while the same figure is smaller than 2% in Iran. There has never been any incentives. Frankly speaking, we are not very much eager to export our products. We can export our goods already, but we do not bother to do so because we are not supported at all. Therefore, we try to market our products inside the country.
This is at a time when the egg producer we met spoke of exports to neighboring Iraq.
Most of the egg is being exported by poultry farms to other countries like Iraq. Iraq is the biggest importer of egg in the world and imports most of its needs from Turkey, Ukraine, and Iran. This has to become more orderly. Exports to Iraq are being done without any supervising body.
But the situation really differs when a company's products are among those wherein Iran enjoys a comparative advantage, in terms of raw material that is. For instance, a plastics items plant has been able to utilize the competitiveness of the local petrochemical products and manage to sell big volumes of Iranian plastics goods to overseas markets.
In 2011, we started exports to Iraq, Turkey, Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, Romania, and India. In the same year, the exports revenue was $700,000. In 2012, our export revenue reached $1 million, but now we're exporting $7 million worth of products.
The increase of Iranian exports and imports has come under circumstances where, compared to a year ago, the value of each metric tons of exported goods has stood at an average $396, which shows an 11% drop. On the other hand, the value of each imported metric tons in Iran, on average and within the first quarter of the current Iranian calendar year, demonstrates a 6% hike, marking some $1,292. This is at a time when the majority of imported goods are essentially such items as corn, wheat, soybean meal, as well as automotive parts, items, and vehicles. Experts, meantime, view this as negative. We ask the same from one.
We charge a much lower price for every ton of exported items, while for imports, we have to pay more. This is an indication that we are the loser party in our foreign trade. In other words, returns of trade is not in our favor, albeit this has always been the case over the course of the previous years. Trade for Iran has kept its downward trend over the years. Earning less from every ton of exported items than the imported ones would be okay in the short run, because as returns of trade dwindle, we will be able to grab new markets elsewhere and set the grounds for our entrance to new export geographies. But if this drags on in the long term, it would not be beneficial for us by any accounts.
Maybe it's better to take a look, more than anything else, at Iran's list of export items. A brief glance makes one realize that the excessive demand as put forward to specific Iranian companies, such as those involved in the mining sector, by certain foreign companies has made a lot of them experience a major sales boost for both their raw material as well as refined, processed, and finished products. The share of such products for this reason has certainly increased among the variety of local export goods. This was something we also heard from a government official we spoke to.
This year, our mineral exports rose by 76% in the first quarter of the current Iranian year. Minerals are typically heavy but cheaply priced. This 76% rise in exports would be less than $1 billion in value, but would severely drag down the total value of exported items. We hope we will be able to carry out mining projects so that less raw materials are exported for more value-added generation.
These circumstances, irrespective of what Herter said, would unfortunately cause less money being made for the country by way of international trade. So what can be done to rectify it?
صادرات تجهیزات صنعتی رو
We should focus on the export of industrial items. Industrial equipment are very light in comparison with their value which springs from the technologies used for their production. The same is true about the imported goods for which we have to pay so much. This is why Iran Trade Promotion Organization has devised plans to endorse production of knowledge-based items with considerable value added.
One of the rockiest markets in the recent years has been that of the forex over here in Iran. You see, the hard currency market, or the forex market in Iran, is essentially a floating one, and there is a difference between the official rate and that of the unofficial one. And this floating nature of the forex in Iran has made a lot of small to medium-sized enterprise owners in Iran essentially unable to plan their future activities or essentially strategize on their profit margins. And this is something, for instance, a local furniture maker has also emphasized.
If the administration is serious in endorsing producers and small enterprises, it can offer to supply raw materials for such industries with a discounted price. This could be done for the items that are already available inside the country, but no such thing is the case in Iran. The only support the administration offers is give loans with high interests for buying equipment. The fact is that the interests charged for these loans are no different from the loans banks would directly and readily offer their customers. This is not a support. In some other countries, producers are given financial support with less than 1% interest.
One of the government's promises to the people has from early on been stability in the foreign exchange market. 3 years into the Rouhani administration at the moment, two rates, being the official and unofficial, are now closer than they've ever been before in the past couple of years. The Iranian Central Bank, CBI, has announced that soon directives would be issued to local banks and they would be allowed to trade hard currency at the free market rates. Meanwhile, observers believe this measure will greatly reduce illicit smuggling activities, which at the moment stands at a very high level, which has in the past no doubt greatly hurt Iranian small to medium-sized enterprises. Now, smuggled goods are to be found less in the local market compared to a year ago, and this is something which would be hopefully only furthered.
The figures released by the anti-smuggling headquarters indicated that the volume of smuggled goods to the country dropped by 25% last year. The sensitivity against smuggled goods in the country will lead to lesser import of smuggled goods in the future. Where imports are unofficial, domestic producers are squeezed out of the market because the smugglers pay no taxes and make it impossible for domestic producers to operate.
The reforms in the Iranian economy, plus the welcoming attitude on behalf of certain foreign governments, especially following the landmark deal between Tehran and 6 world powers last year, known as the JCPOA, will hopefully help the Iranian government's economy come out of recession. This is something the current administration also needs to probably bank on in order to get re-elected next year. So we'll just have to wait and see just how the ship of the Iranian economy will actually set sail and in which direction. But before saying goodbye, how about using these online channels, as always, to get in touch with us and tell us what you think we really ought to do to improve this program. But that's it for this week's edition of Iran Today here on Press TV with me, Zubin Zarvan. Thank you for watching us. Till another edition comes, it's goodbye.